This is Kugan Cassius for iFLTV. It is Monday morning, or brunch as me and Gareth like to call it here in Essex. 11 minutes past 11. How are you, Gareth, first of all?
I'm ready for brunch, but I'm ready for a good munch and a chat before brunch.
Absolutely. Just before we start, this book here, which people can't see because you're the only one on the screen, but this takes huge pride on my table. Call of the Warrior. Um, I've read it now, Gareth. I've actually gone through it twice now.
Well,
Um,
amazing.
and yeah, apart from the spectacular photography featured in it, I told you my favourite articles in it was the Hearn one, and actually Golovkin as well. I was a big fan. I am a big fan of Golovkin, and it was interesting to read your essay on Triple G.
Well, the funny thing you say about you've had a look at it twice, that's the whole idea of the book, is that basically you flick through it and there's pictures of the photographs are amazing. It's all black and white. It's in that Tash and Muhammad Ali style. And then you're meant to, there's the press release, you're meant to kind of glance through it first of all, enjoy all the pictures, then go back to the essays. The whole idea is that you pick it out bit at a time. It's not a novel to read. It's not one person's life. It's 28 essays on different fighters of the era. Volume two's been commissioned as well. I mean, I've had a lot of really positive feedback. I think I've got to go and sign. I've signed about 500 books so far, ready all to go out. It's a limited edition, 1,000 books, and it's a brilliant Christmas present for anyone. If you can pop the link in the interview today, that'll be amazing. But no, thank you very much, and it's been very rewarding. It was a lot of work. First book, a lot of work. It's been very rewarding indeed. Uh,
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Kugan.
It's a bit too big to go into a conventional stocking, but you could, don't know.
It's 2.2 kilos, which
I know how.
I feel like Carl Froch talking about 80,000 at Wembley. I keep mentioning this 2.2 kilos, but when you're signing, I signed 300 the other day. It took about 4 hours. Signed all of them and like moving them all and packaging them and putting them back into the boxes. I mean, it's work, you know.
Too big, too strong. Um,
Thank you,
right,
anyway. Much appreciated.
no problem. Right, actually, that leads me on to what I really want to speak to you about first before we speak about anything. Gareth A.Davies versus the Cobra. What's going on then? Have you heard from him since you? I watched your interview on Talksport with Adam Cattrall, and yeah, obviously I've back referencing off Carl's comments on MVP Jake Paul, Errol Hawani, and you as well.
Yeah, Nikisa Badarian as well on the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. Well, Carl had a big rip at us. I won the Super Clown poll. I think I got 37%. Only because all I've said is that I think Jake Paul and what he's doing is good for boxing. It's definitely good for women's boxing. It doesn't harm boxing in any way, in my view. Obviously, full disclosure, I get a lot of access to the Paul brothers and Nikisa Badarian, and as a result, Carl had a pop last week on his Froch on fighting after his Froch along. Um, listen, I get on very well with Carl. I always have done. Loved his career. I think what he and Rachel are doing is great on his podcast, the Q&As, the Froch alongs, the Froch on fighting. He goes right over there on this end of the spectrum and is highly critical of everything he sees that's not purist in boxing, and I get it. But my right of reply on Talk Sport on Saturday night was based on, be very careful, Carl. You're calling out Jake Paul. You've been away from the ring next year for 11 years. You're 48 next year. You're 21 years older than this young man that's trying to make his way as a cruiserweight in boxing. You've said you could beat him with one arm behind your back. You couldn't. You haven't been in a ring for 10 years. Be very careful what you wish for. He might be biting off more than he can chew here, because if he happened to have a hard time in 8 2-minute rounds against Jake Paul. Couldn't show his face again. And you know, I think Carl's got, I'm going to see him at the IBA, International Boxing Association press conference this week, and I'm going to wag a few fingers in his face. No doubt he'll wag a few fingers in mine just to say, no, you stay out of my business. But the point is, he's making himself relevant, because if Jake Paul calls him out, and I know I'm going to get a lot of haters for this, if Jake Paul calls him out, Carl is going to have to accept. And me, like everyone else, is going to watch, because we all want Carl to knock Jake out. But can he still knock him out? That's the big question. He's maybe talking a Wembley Stadium 80,000 plus event into existence here. And I literally, I think I'm helping him in a way by making it relevant. I think Carl can't say no if Jake says yes, because that's a big event. And then he's putting himself into that milieu he says he doesn't want to be a part of. So is he the super troll, or is he actually looking for work? Is he looking for business? So, you know, if you talk yourself into it, can you say no if Jake Paul suddenly says, do you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna call Carl out and we're gonna have this fight. What's your view? Is it going to be hard after 10 years away?
I will tell you my view. Absolutely. I'm gonna weigh in on this debate, right? So my opinion is, right, and probably because like I'm close with Carl, and I'm close with Tony Bellew as well, right? Now, Tony Bellew's been out the ring for not as long as Carl, but a considerable amount of time. Now, if they were in a training camp for Jake Paul, say let's give it a 6-month training camp, for example. They've been out the ring for a while. Would they beat Jake Paul? In my opinion, yes. Carl Froch and Tony Bellew would beat, with a 6-month training camp, get back into whatever. Obviously, they've not had the ring, they haven't ring rust, they've not stepped into a ring as such for a considerable amount of time. But those fighters, and you're talking about world level fighters in their time, I would say would definitely beat Jake Paul. But I do get your point about it doesn't matter when that gap is going further and further where you haven't been in the ring, and you're talking about someone like Jake Paul. People can criticize Jake Paul they want, but this is a man in the prime of his fitness, right? I get what you're saying, but Carl Froch and Tony Bellew are very different to a 58-year-old Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
And certain fighters that Jake Paul has fought. But I'm in agreement with you about, I don't have no issue with what Jake Paul's done. Like I said to you, a lot of eyes have been put on boxing that probably wouldn't have been.
50 million watched a women's fight.
Exactly. And the after effects of Jake Paul, i.e. the women's fight, which was one of the best fights that we've ever seen between Serrano and Taylor, the rematch, we might have not seen that. Possibly not. Maybe we would have, maybe we wouldn't have. But for those reasons, yes. And I've got no issue with this whole Jake Paul. IFL's covered Jake Paul ever since before the KSI Logan Paul fight, the rematch back in 2019. I don't have an issue with it, but I suppose Froch is looking at you, talking about comments regarding Jake Paul, etc. And
he wants me to be a purist, like other people. Like I was heavily criticised for going back at Carl. You know, virtually all the comments on TalkSport in response were saying, "Look, you don't know what you're talking about." They were criticising me. They weren't saying, by the way, that Carl was going to wipe the floor with Jake. But people know. But what they're saying is, should we be giving airspace to Jake Paul? My view is yes. It's as simple as that. Look, the point about, sorry, my gates just need opening here. The point about, sorry, Kugan. So my point was to you that all he's saying is be a purist, that it doesn't do anything for boxing, that we're pulling the wool over each other's eyes. That's fine. But what Carl's saying is, it almost contradicts himself, because he's saying, stay out of boxing, but I'd knock you out. So what does he want? Do you want to get involved, or does he not? He wants to be very careful here, in my view, because he could end up self-fulfilling what he doesn't want to do, which is step in the ring with Jake and earn money from it and get involved in the same milieu that he's criticizing. And I wouldn't blame him for doing that either, because Carl has become a super troll and become relevant again in the sport, you know?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think ever since Carl Froch retired, like you said, nearly coming up 11 years ago, I don't think Carl's relevance in boxing has ever gone away. I feel like it's been more enhanced since he's done his Froch on fighting, which is very watchable. I mean, like, whether you like Carl or not, it is a good segment in boxing that people tune into. But
Correct.
but
He's got brilliant views on the sport. He's been there. He's been at the top level, four-time world champion, Hall of Famer, one of the modern stars of British boxing. He only fell short against a guy in Andre Ward, really, who arguably was number one pound for pound when he left the sport. He avenged defeat against Mikkel Kessler after a very close defeat when he went there in the ash cloud with Rachel in that flight when she was pregnant. So in many ways, he did go quiet for a while. No, I think he has made himself relevant again. He's made himself relevant again in a way that he's a commentator on the sport, like he was there in the dressing rooms with both guys on Saturday night in Birmingham, because you know his old trainer Rob McCracken was there with Galal Yafai, and the Yafai brothers. So no, Carl is relevant now, like he wasn't before. He's been relevant in this new milieu of YouTubers. He's doing the same thing. He's an observer on the sport. I think that's slightly different to Tony Bellew, by the way, who's much fresher. It's 10 years since he fought Groves at Wembley. That's a very long time. Who's the only person in history that went away for 10 years, Kugan?
what, in Britain?
No, anywhere.
What, and come back and did something of relevance?
Yeah. There's only one guy that really did it.
I'll kick myself when you say it, so you might as well just say it.
It's George Foreman.
Foreman.
He's the only one.
Yeah.
No one else has done. No one in boxing that I can recall did what George Foreman did, which has come back after all that time and made himself. Could Carl now beat a Superman? Could Carl fight Canelo right now?
That one, you'd have to say, listen, Canelo's an active fighter as of today. That one's possibly a little bit more far-fetched for Carl to come in after 10, 11 years. But
is it far-fetched for Canelo to fight Jake Paul?
It's probably more likely that Canelo will fight Jake Paul than Carl Froch.
There you go. There you go. And that's all I was saying last week.
I know, but
that's all I was saying.
That's to do with, I'll tell you two reasons why I said that. First of all, obviously Canelo's still an active fighter. Secondly, when I've asked Eddie Hearn about that, he said that if the situation and there was that amount of money on the table, he'd probably do it. That's what Eddie
would, because he'd earn 120 to 150 million. It's a yes from Canelo. It's a no-brainer. And this is all I say to people. The only reason I can see that fight happening is, you know, I was inherent in certainly in interview terms on TV at the time with both Mayweather and McGregor, of suggesting it to both of them in TV interviews, even to the point where McGregor's agent said, first of all, I'm not sure about that. And yet McGregor and his trainer, John Kavanagh, said, yes, Garrett, show me the money. That's what they said to me. And Mayweather said, yeah, I'll take the guy on. And I had him live on stage at the NEC at the time. I was sitting on stage interviewing him at a function for Mayweather on tour. And, you know, we had Al Ferran doing Mayweather saying, it's about time you fought me, isn't it, man? You're like this. And Mayweather loved it. And the thing started to grow legs. I'm only talking in promotional terms, knowing that if you signed Canelo and Jake Paul to happen, it would do astronomical numbers. So would Carl Froch and Jake Paul in the UK. So would KSI and Jake Paul in the UK. So would Mayweather and Jake Paul in America, you know? But in a way, Mayweather's already fought his brother and we know what's going to happen. He's a bit too small. When you know that these fights will make enormous amounts of money, I'm not I'm not saying that I think they're amazing and I love them, but they're going to happen. If the guys agree, they're going to happen, because boxing is a sport, just like more than a sport, it's a business. And when the business works, it goes ahead. A bit like on Saturday night with Sonny Edwards, there's another kind of aphorism in boxing, which is you can't play boxing. If you're not ready anymore, if the desire's not there, you can't play boxing, because it's not a sport, it's a fight. And on Saturday night, and it's so fresh in my mind still, because I was looking at it live on TalkSport, Sonny Edwards is no longer a fighter, you know, in boxing terms. And we saw that so plainly. And he took too much punishment for 3 more rounds than he should have, in my view. You know, that's just my view. And I don't want to see the young man who's a brilliant, brilliant human being get hurt. You were there.
I was there. Yeah, it was a strange night, and all props to Galal Yafai. I think a lot of the attention on Saturday night was taken by Sonny Edwards' comments during the fight, and also his post-fight comments about retiring. But let's take nothing away from Galal Yafai, who has got a very good future ahead of himself, and it was a great win. I think a lot of people were splitting between what was going to happen in this fight, speaking to people in Birmingham all week. But in regards to Sonny Edwards, was as honest as you're ever going to get from Sonny Edwards, we know him to be that anyway. But the comments after round 2 were concerning to hear that. But then after the fight, obviously, you know, he explained his thought process. He kind of made a little bit in jest comments about he didn't know the mic was on. Of course, he knew the mic was on. I don't think it has any relevance to whether the mic was on or not. But it was a sad moment there. And Sonny Edwards has been great. And like I said, he's accomplished everything he could have accomplished. Didn't unify. We know that against Bam, but he outlines that fight as his kind of marquee moment. You know, he was.
Listen, he won the world title. He won all the other titles. He won the world title. He defended it 5 times. No one could lay a glove on him from really dangerous flyweight world champions. He comes up against a modern master in Bam Rodriguez, who's changing the face of the flyweight division. Superfly will probably go all the way up to super bantam. Will probably fight Naoya Inoue at some point. Could even have the tools to beat Naoya Inoue. We don't know if he's a great yet, but he's certainly a young modern master in that sense. And, you know, that fight probably took a lot out of him. Galal Yafai is a very aggressive, counter-punching southpaw. Sonny needed to be on his game. I flip-flop. I did pick Galal, first of all, when the fight was announced, but then I went back and looked at Sonny's experience. But on the nights, Sonny wasn't that same will-o'-the-wisp, jack-in-the-box, evasive, hit-and-not-be-hit fighter anymore. He stood with Galal from the beginning. He didn't seem to have that momentum and movement. I can say his corner should have pulled him out between rounds 2 and 3, but they know him really well. He's been great for the sport. We don't want to see him get hurt. As I say, 5 defenses of the title. Hopefully he's done well behind the scenes with that. I know he's involved with the Undisputed game. He's a very free-thinking individual, and he's got a great future ahead of him as a human being, but not a boxer anymore. He'll probably be a great trainer. He's already in the corner with other people. He's got the versatility to do a lot of things. And I'm glad, mercifully, the referee stopped the fight after 6 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of discussion regarding the stoppage. I spoke to Sonny Edwards immediately after the fight, and he said that he felt that it was a little bit premature. But given the context that was developing during the fight, especially in the round 2 comments, I don't really think anyone had a kind of issue with that fight being stopped, more so because of Sonny's comments that he was making in the round.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, they know each other. They know each other better than we do, so we have to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. But it's just very unusual to hear a boxer saying, "I don't want to be here," and their corner not pulling them out. We didn't get a non-reaction from his guy. His guy said, "Listen, pull yourself together. You know what we've been through in camp. Get yourself back in there." and you know, didn't want to pull Sonny out at that point because he felt Sonny had more in him. But something happened in the course of that. I like what Sonny said last week, by the way. Why are we being made to do a press conference late in the evening when we're the guys losing weight and weighing in? I thought that might have something to do with it initially. But like you say, you and I spoke off air and I said, did you know that he was retiring? There was no indication for anyone involved in the media, anyone who was any close than we are to him, that he was going to retire, win, lose, or draw on the night.
Yeah, I had no idea. Spent 3 or 4 days, obviously, around Sonny Edwards that week in Birmingham. I don't think anyone did. I mean, maybe people very close to him obviously would have known that that was his intention, win, lose, or draw. But listen, bottom line is Sonny's had an incredible career. I'm sure he will still have relevance in boxing. He's a fantastic commentator that can analyse fights very well and very open and honest. So I hope he does kind of drift into that. He'll be good at management. We know that. He's got great interest in looking after fighters. So there's still a place for Sonny Edwards in boxing there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm known for my profligate talking, but what he's got to learn, and I've said this to him before, publicly and privately, is that he's got to learn to edit himself a little bit more. But his analysis of fighting itself and boxing is very, very good. It's just his answers are too long. But again, it's a learning process, and he'll be very good at it.
Absolutely. Gareth, before I do let you go, I know you've got a busy day, but Riyadh is quickly approaching.
Yeah.
And I mean, that promo, I'll tell you what, that promo, which is basically a film that Riyadh Season in Turkey put out yesterday. I mean, it's the best one I've seen. And we thought that a few of the other ones, Day of Reckoning and a couple of the other Fury-Usyk promos were good. But this one was very, very cleverly put together as almost a mini horror film.
Yeah, dark, very dark humor. It's a nightmare, isn't it? Like they're an obsession for each other, but it's a nightmare. And basically, it's almost like they're in each other's heads and will have been. Funnily enough, I spoke to Spencer Brown this morning, Tyson Fury's manager, and they said prison camp in Malta is like prison, which for me is good news. Tyson's running the hills. As you know, he hasn't done much social media, he hasn't done many interviews. I can't recall anyone interviewing him. I don't think you've had an interview with him. I can't recall anyone else interviewing him while he's been in camp. Obviously, they head to Riyadh in a few days' time. I've watched the head-to-head with them, the face-off with Buncey and on TNT. Fantastic 12 minutes. They've got great respect for each other. I think it's a really tight fight again. I hear Tyson Fury's got a few things in store ready for Alexander Usyk. They're very happy with his weight. His conditioning is great this time. We're in for another barnstormer. I think it's going to be a very close, very brutal affair second time around. And of course, you know, for Tyson Fury, he's got to win this in order to stay in. I know it doesn't bother him, but stay in recognition terms with history and with the fans as being the number one in the era, because he's got to win this fight and potentially a trilogy with Usyk to be the number one in the era. But from camp, Spencer Brown tells me that all is well.
Yeah, obviously this is now less than 3 weeks away, and I feel that week is going to be very special. It's a great end to 2025, and even Riyadh season as a whole, which has been a massive success this whole year. We've seen some great fights, and long may that continue into 2025. And I think 2025, and the last point I'll make, obviously, there's a lot of rumours regarding February 22nd. Suddenly fights are on and suddenly fights are off. Suddenly
It's
fights
a big card. There's a big card coming
huge
on.
card, regardless of what is going to be announced, which is going to be relatively soon. That card looks to be the best Riyadh season card that they have produced in a very short space of time.
Well, it's going to equal some of the very best, like Knockout Chaos, Ring of Fire, Better Be Evan Bivol. I mean, it's going to be another blockbuster. There's no doubt about it. And then we're going to get another one, April, May, June. We're going to get another very big card after Queensberry and Frank Warren cross over to DAZN with Eddie Hearn and Oscar De La Hoya. I mean, I'm hearing there's going to be a massive card to celebrate that as well. It's a brilliant time. It's a great end to the year.
Absolutely. And we can kind of talk about Fury-Usyk as days ponder on. Okay, Gareth, listen, thank you very much for your time. It is the 2nd of December now.
And what's the weather like today? Is it brisk?
It's a bit nippy. A bit nippy, Gareth.
It's brisk.
Every day is brisk. Gareth A.Davies, thank you very much for your time. When I click this out, hope Paul of the Warrior. Yes, absolutely. Get your copy now in time for Christmas. Gareth will personally bike to your destination as long as it's in Essex.
Easy.
Or within a 3-mile radius of his house.
Yeah.
And listen, we're definitely going to catch up, obviously, over the coming 3 weeks, which is, I think we're going to have a dramatic end to the year. So let's see.
Lovely. See you soon. Thank you, Kugan.
Top man. Thank you very much, Gareth A. Davies for IFLTV. Thank you.